What is up, everybody? Slash here. Today we're going to be taking a look at something that is near and dear to my heart, and that is Overealm decks. So for a long time I've always played Demegra, and now that Demegra is, we're not really seeing any return of him. What's the next best thing, or better thing in this case? That is Supreme Kai of Time. Now, Supreme Kai of Time is an amazing deck. If you love Overealm and you love just being super aggressive, well, this might be the deck for you. So, without further ado, let's jump into it. So, here we are. We have Supreme Kai of Time. Now, this deck is a load of fun. I absolutely love this deck. So, let's start with the leader. We have an auto burst 3, so you're putting cards into your drop, so you can set up for your Overealm. You draw 1 when this card attacks, and if you have 8 or more cards in your warp, then you can awaken, you go to 6 lives left, draw 2, flip it over. And this card itself is just so good. It is so good. When you play a battle card using Overealm, draw 1, then place 3 black cards from your warp back into your drop. So you can help recycle things to set up for your next Overealm. And then we have the activate main once per turn. 1 black energy, choose 1 card in your hand, discard it. If you don't have a unison in play, play up to 1 black unison with no specified cost and 9k power from your drop, or warp with a marker on it. So that is very relevant because we're going to be setting up with this particular unison. Reason being is because we are a god only card, when we activate a Overealm, we get to burst 1, and then we get to activate Wormhole. So that way now we're already being able to Overealm twice per turn. Then for the rest of the effect, because we have this amazing ability here, activate main once per turn, place 1 card from your life in your drop area, place up to 2 black battle cards from your warp into your drop, and battle cards you play using Overealm aren't sent to your warp at the end of your turn. Now that ability is bonkers for this deck. The best part is, you can Overealm first, and then later, like before you end your turn, then you can pop this ability off. That way you're going to keep all your Overealm cards. And the cards we're running for this deck, we have 52 cards. I was running 50 at first, but I found that if you're versing yellow, or blue, that can stall you very well. You get to a point where you can actually kind of run out of deck pretty quick. So I found that 52 was just a little bit better. I wasn't thinning out too much. And yeah, we've got our Demegras here. So as we've seen with the first effect here, it's amazing. Grants us Wormhole, so we can Overealm twice per turn. Then we have this ability here, activate main, +1, place up to 2 black battle cards from your warp to your drop. So that's going to also help us Overealm even more. And then the other ability is activate main, -3, add up to 2 black battle cards with energy cost of 7 or less with the Overealm skill from your warp to your hand. So that's a cool effect. I've never really gotten to do that. In most battles, people will early game attack your unison. But if that happens, it's no problem because you're able to just pay 1 and bring it back. And you're not really using that much energy in this deck. So once per turn, having to pay that 1 energy for this isn't that bad, really. And the best effect to this all is you're playing this like turn 1, if you have it in your hand. Then you're able to, by turn 2, because you're bursting everything, you would be able to get cards in your warp pretty quickly. So always, typically, by turn 2, you're going to be awakened. So that's easy done. This card is a great card. It is an Overealm 3, so you could play it if you want to hard play it. Then you could use the bottom effect here if you hard play it. Send this card to its owner's warp, draw 2, then send 1 card from your hand to your warp. I never really use this effect. The great effect to this is, if your leader is a Black Supreme Kai of Time, you discard this card from your hand, look at the top 5 top of your deck, add up to 1 Black Son Goku Xeno or Black Vegeta Xeno, and then add it to your hand. Shuffle your deck. So it is a great card in general. It's also 5k, and of course we're running our 5k Vegetas, which then in turn allows us to play our thwarting if we see it. And of course if it goes to your warp, that's no problem. We've got our other cards, just like Beyond All Limits Goku, to be able to fetch it back, or also even the ability here from our unison. And then we've also got 2 Bardock's the Tenacious. I prefer to run this just because I run 2 of these in my Cumber, and I'm way too lazy to move them. So I thought, let's actually do it this way in this deck, because it will make it a little bit cheaper, and I can just side these in, so you know options that you can do to make it that little bit stronger if you wanted to go all in. And then, yeah, so you have Bardock the Tenacious. It's a great card. You pay 1, Overealm 6, and when this card is played, you can't play copies of this card during your next turn, and your opponent can only attack with battle cards once during the next turn. So that is going to be really good to stop the, kind of like a floodgate against them. Typically around like turn 3 is a good time to do it, because that's when they're going to start pumping up their field, and they're going to do the multiple attacks, typically. So that's a good time to use it. We have 2 Super Kamehameha counters. It's just a really good card. You're going to get to 4 pretty quick, so you'll be able to use its effect pretty easy. And then you get rid of a energy cost of 3 or less and send it to its owner's warp. So it's just a good card. We've got 3 Support of the Dark Empires. I'm thinking about going 4, just because the free play counters are pretty handy in this deck, but that's why we run quite a few in general. Like I've got 3, 6, 7, 8 here in total, and then of course the 2 minus energies, just because you may end up like losing a few counters, and you don't want to be too short on counters, of course. So we also have Petrification. This can just stall out those dual attacks and those pesky boss monsters and whatnot. It's a great card. We also have 2 Supreme Kai of Times. This can just help get rid of cards on their field for that turn, and then they'll bounce back with their skills negated. We also have Revived Ravager Vegeta. This is just a fantastic card. It is an Overealm 3, and then when you play this card using Overealm, place up to 3 cards from the top of your deck to your drop, so you can set up for your next Overealm. And this is a 15k crit. Yeah, so we run 4 copies of them. It can just help us for that early game push to stay aggressive, and also help set up our drop for the next Overealm. We also run 4 Masked Saiyans. This is just a great card as well. If you have Overealmed something this turn, this will become a 1 cost, and when this card is played, choose up to 2 of your opponent's battle cards, send them to their owner's warps, and this card gains critical for the turn. At the end of your turn, at the end of your opponent's next turn, negate the skills of all cards sent to their warps by this skill for the turn, and play them in the owner's battle area. So we're just temporarily stopping their field for a little while. It's a good card. It is pretty good. And then we've also got our Trunks. We've got the Dual Attacker 19k Overealm 6. And then, of course, it's not once per turn with this auto, which is fantastic. When you attack with this card, you will get to choose a card from your warp and combo with it. And once you do that, you could charge it to your Z energy if you need to, or place it back in your drop to help set up for your next Overealm. What we're trying to do here, which we'll get to very shortly, but more or less we're trying to play one of our Trunkses, that way we can play this for 1 energy to hard play it. And this is a 25k double strike. It also has the Overealm 6 if you wish to do it that way. This has a permanent when this card would be removed from the battle area, remove it from the game instead. It makes sense, pretty strong card. But yeah, what you're doing is you're paying 1 energy. Because you have a Trunks Xeno on the field, you're able to play this, and then, of course, on play, you draw 1 card, which is fantastic. And this will be a 25k double strike to your opponent. And then we've also got our Thwarting the Dark Empire. Of course, goes without saying. We have our 4 Beyond All Limits. We have our ultimate for the deck. I just use this one because I traded my Evil Saiyan for the Beast Gohan. And yeah, I was happy with that. So I bought this one as a cheap option. And it's just, it's a really good card. It's got a really good floodgate ability here. And also for 1 energy, being a 50k double strike to your opponent, it's pretty good if you want to go for a game ender. So yeah, I choose to play this. And then we've got our 2 minus energy Powerballs. This is just because now we have something to deal with barrier that are 15k or less. So it is a very handy card to have. Also, if you want to push for game, you can always do this ability and give a card 15k. I believe it is your leader. Or battle cards. Yeah, that's pretty cool. And then we have our 4 pans. A lot of people run 3. I prefer 4. Just because you're not really using your Z deck that much besides this card in general. You have 2 choices for your removal to your opponent. And of course, you've got this to self-awaken if you need to do it that way. But what this card does is, if your leader is Black Supreme Kai of Time, when this card is placed from your life in your drop by one of your leader skills, add the top card of your deck to your life. Now, why that is relevant is because what we're doing is we're going to try and flood our field. We're going to go Overealm this, let's say, for the turn. Then we can play this for 1 energy. Then we're able to Overealm again because we have our unison on the board. So let's say we play Vegeta, right? So we play Vegeta on the field as well for our second Overealm. Once we've done that, then we can activate this ability and place one card from your life in your drop, then place 2 black battle cards, blah blah blah, like I explained. Why it's doing that is now these are going to stay on the board, which is going to be so good for your next turn to keep that aggression going. They're going to have to deal with your field every time. Now, that's why we run a little bit of these floodgates like Bardock, because we don't want them being too aggressive by cleaning your entire board, because if that probably happens 2 or 3 times, you have a low chance of winning, because your hand's going to empty very quickly, and you're drawing a decent amount of cards, but not a lot. So you want to be careful with that. So that's why I run a little bit of floodgates. But yeah, so this card, what it's going to be doing for you is when you're using your ability, your once per turn down here, instead of having to take a life and now get to keep your cards on the field, you'll take a life, place it in your drop, and then this ability will pop off, and then you can place the top card of your deck back in your life. So you're not going to be running yourself short. So it's a very handy card. It's easily removed, which sucks, but it's pretty easy to replay. I've had games where I play 3 in one game even. Not always the best option to do, but I had a point where if you're versing things like Dormant Potential, I mean, you get stalled out, so it's just handy to keep playing another one, just so you can keep those cards on your field and keep your life high to avoid their fated rivals and things like that. And then we have, the side deck. This is just if you want stronger options, and more or less for like your turns 1, 2, and 3. Turn 1, you're trying to get your Demigger on the field. It's pretty handy to have that set up as soon as possible. If you don't see it, that's not a problem. You get to use your Burst 3 when your leader attacks. Then, of course, you have 3 in your drop already. Your goal is to get to 8, so that's not too difficult to do. Then you can also even turn 1 play this if you want to be aggressive, and then you get to set another 3. And then the other 3 that you've played goes to your warp because you're overwhelming it, of course. But that's kind of a good setup for early game in a way. You also have this option where you can do this, send 1 card to your warp. So really, it is very quick to get your Overealm 8 to be able to awaken very quickly. Because you're being able to Overealm so easily with so low cost cards, it's going to be set up very quick. And then of course for like turns 2 and 3, you'll be awakened at that point. That's when you can either use this ability to play your unison if you don't see it, or you just play it yourself if you can, turn 1 or 2. And then from that effect, you can now Overealm twice per turn. And because of that, then you want to play something like a Trunks and maybe a Vegeta, or possibly even a Beyond All Limits if you're trying to set up a thwarting, if you happen to see it already. You get cards into your drop and your warp very quick, so there's no stress about being high cost Overealm in order to get this on your board. So don't worry about that. It's very easy to do. And then, of course, turn 3s, you can always play your Bardock. You're just going to keep doing the ability to stay aggressive as possible and keep your cards on board. You have a lot of searches in your deck as well, so that's really handy. And yeah, you just want to stay aggressive. That's all you're doing, is you're going aggressive. You keep a few counters in hand if you see them, but there's nothing too much to worry about with that. Because you're so aggressive, it's probably going to empty their hand, unless they just have like the crazy floodgates. But that's why we also run Super Kamehameha, to stop those pesky defending friends for blue, right? So yeah, this is the deck overall. And in general, I think the price point for this deck, I think the most expensive cards, these have gone up a bit now. This is like €4 each now, and these are about €4 each, and maybe dropping if you can find some singles. But yeah, the deck is very cheap, and I do highly recommend it. If you like Overealm, this is something to try. It is a very fun deck. So, I hope you liked the video. If you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. Thanks for watching. Peace. Links to the deck will be in the video description.